Was a recording in progress. All right. This was going to be fun. Diving right in. We were just whining before this, so we're trying to adjust here and get back to being normal people and not the whining little pansies that we are. And yes, we were whining about work. So welcome to our world is the same as your world, probably. So we're going to continue. This is the When Coffee Hits the Fan, real talk on developer disaster recovery. This is actually interesting because I already threw it in there, and the first thing that came back is that's a brilliant and catchy title, which I think was generated by itself. So it's like patting itself on the back while it's like, wow, that's awesome. I'm glad you sent me one of those, or you used our title. All right, well, let's dive into it and see how it goes with a little 3, 2, 1. Well, hello and welcome back. We are continuing our season where it is with AI. Yes, we are Building Better Developers, the Developreneur podcast. This season, we are going back through prior season, going through some of the episodes and basically shoving those into an AI engine, specifically ChatGPT, and seeing what it gives us back as its recommendations, just to sort of see how AI does stuff. Before that, I need to talk about how I do stuff. Who am I? I am Rob Broadhead. I'm one of the founders of Developreneur, also a founder of, actually the founder of RB Consulting, where it's a lot of different ways to refer to it. Sometimes we're called a fractional CTO, CIO. Sometimes we'd be referred to as boutique consulting. The bottom line is we sit down with our customers, we work through their business, talk about what are they doing, what are their processes, what are their goals and their vision. And then we look at what kind of technologies do they have, what kind of technologies are out there for them. And we will use a whole bunch of different tools, whether it's simplification, integration, automation, innovation, any of those things and more, we will use to help them craft essentially a recipe for success that is unique to that company, because everybody's got a little bit of a different take on stuff. You got different staff, different needs, different resources. We help mirror those, or actually marry those things together, provide a technical roadmap, and then can help you implement it, or can let you go on and just on your merry way following that roadmap. Good thing, bad thing. Very much near and dear to my heart right now. Good thing is we are going through and updating the townhome that we just recently got. We got a whole bunch of little things to do. So that's great. That's awesome. And I've got a wife that does that stuff. So she's off doing all that cool things. Bad thing is that sometimes she can't get some of those things done because it needs, as she calls it, somebody with muscles. And yes, I happen to have a couple. So I had to actually come to the townhouse, which we don't have, which is really the bad thing. We don't really have Wi-Fi here. So I'm working off my phone. So I may not have the best connectivity this time around, which is okay, because at some point that means I'll just block, have to see him, but you will if you're on the YouTube. But more importantly, let him introduce himself. Hopefully, dig himself out of the hole that I just created for him. Apologies.
Hey everyone, my name is Michael Meloche. I'm one of the co-founders of Developreneur. I'm also the founder and owner of Envision QA, where we help startups and growing companies launch better products faster. That means fewer bugs, smoother customer experience, and less wasted time and money. We take care of the behind-the-scenes quality work so teams can focus on building and scaling. Learn more at envisionqa.com. We also offer other things like software assessments, technical assessments, and really we can help you understand what your software stack is or what technologies you have if you have no idea. So we can also help you help yourself and improve your products. Good thing, bad thing. Good thing, had a nice restful weekend. 4th of July was a lot of fun. Got to catch up with some old friends and see some people we haven't seen in a while. Weather was absolutely great. It rained a little bit, but I have to say that was probably the first week we've had less rain and more sun, so that was a lot of fun. Bad side of that, we were at the River House, and of course, as we're going through all the checklists, we had to get some repairs done as well. So we had to replace a couple toilets, and garbage disposal went out, and then of course some plumbing issues. So good with the bad.
Well, we have nothing but good ahead of us today. We're going to take the episode that was called, this, I guess, is originally was called "When Coffee Hits the Fan: Real Talk on Developer Disaster Recovery." And so we have thrown this into ChatGPT, and it comes back with, "That's a brilliant and catchy title," because it likes us. It was going like neutral for a little bit. It's come back to, I think it heard me talking about it. It's probably out there like sourcing data, and it's like, ooh, we're being, we're getting shade thrown at us. So let's come back to this like little bubbly thing that it likes to do. So let's dive right into this one. This one's interesting. So they add a cold open episode structure, cold open, 1 to 2 minutes. Describe a humorous or dramatic coffee spill scenario. For example, you just pushed to production. CI passed. You sip your coffee and then you see the site is down completely. Cue theme music. That would be a really dramatic entrance into our podcast that I have never actually done. I don't think so. Interesting idea. Maybe in a future season, we will adjust how we come into these things. The best we get is the Christmas and Thanksgiving music that we get in New Year's, I guess, when we do those. Not a whole lot there. So, all right, we missed that, but we're going to go into Act One, real developer disasters, 8 to 10 minutes. Let's see if we can keep it to that. Hook with real world stories or invite a guest to share their worst oops moment. Now, this is interesting because this is actually giving me a very different answer than we've gotten in the past couple of times. Well, actually now, dozen or so times that we've done this. So, hook with real world stories or invite a guest, including accidentally wiped out a production database, hotfix that broke everything, misconfigured cloud resources, which equals $10,000 overnight, copied, pasted secret keys into a public repository, actually spilling on a keyboard mid-deploy. It is amazing how many of those things, I think there's one maybe that I haven't had. I don't think I've actually spilled coffee on a keyboard mid-deploy. I don't know that I've ever actually, because I don't drink coffee, that I've actually spilled it. I think I've spilled stuff on keyboards and lost keyboards, but deploy. So I have like one of the 5 that they give us. It has not happened. Misconfigured cloud resources. I'm just going to jump on that one real quick because that's like, it's not necessarily a disaster per se, but it can be a real, pretty darn close to it. And it's actually, I think it's more common. I've seen it a lot of times. It's probably more common than some of these other, we'll call them, in quotes, disasters. And it really comes down to, and I hate to throw them under the bus, but Amazon, Google, Microsoft, when you build with their tools, with their cloud tools, when you build environments, they build them, which is, I'm going to give them, a little bit of grace and forgiveness here because they build them to be essentially an enterprise level solution. The problem that we have a lot of times, particularly as side hustlers and developers and things like that, is we don't need something of that level. So, for example, I used, and this goes back to when we're doing our learn to develop an internet, launch your internet business. That's it. We're doing that. One of the things we do is we use Amazon, we do an EC2 instance, and we do WordPress. Well, at one point, I decided to use the Amazon tools to do it, to make it easier. And it set up a WordPress environment, but it included, it went out and did Route 53 for SSL. It had a secure cert, which I didn't even need, but it was like, that's $100 right there. It spun up like 3 different servers. I think there was 2 front-end web servers. There was 1 back-end database, and they were all connected, an RDS database. And then there was a load balancer. And then there was like a couple of extra file servers out there just for media and stuff like that, which if you've got a nice big WordPress installation, awesome. The like daily cost of that thing that it generated for me was, I think, wasn't huge, but it was like $50 or $60, maybe $100 a day. If you're blogging and you're just starting out, you're not going to generate $100 a day to support your. And we were sitting there, launch your internet business on, basically less than $50. So that would have completely blown it all up. So we immediately said, no, that is not an option that we're going to suggest to people. and I don't want to throw Amazon on the bus because I have done the same thing with Azure, with or with Google. I would say they what they build makes sense, but it also doesn't often make sense for you if you're just like, playing around with it, doing some development, some testing and things like that. So minor disasters, but they can cost you. And I have more than a couple times spent a little more money than I wanted to on places like, especially like cloud providers and things like that. I will now toss it to you because I'm probably almost burned through all of our 10 minutes already.
Yeah, so on this one, I'm going to take the database one because so many times that has bitten me in the butt because it's like, okay, you're working and you may think you're in production or you may think you're not in production and you're on a different machine, depending upon how you interface with the database. If you're like logging in through command line interface, they all look the same unless you go do some custom coloring to make sure that the system you're connecting to is the color for what you're on. Green is good, yellow is worn, like QA, and red is prod. Make sure you don't break anything. I'm just going to go kind of quickly through this one. So with this, I will start with kind of the what you should be doing first. Time wise, you don't always have this, but always back up the system that you're working on. Make sure you have data backups or system backups. Make sure that the tools that you're using has those color features that I was just mentioning. Also, make sure that if you are using tools, make sure you turn off auto commit for any environment other than dev. If you make a mistake, you can easily recover if auto commit is off. It may take longer, but it can save your butt so many times. It won't even. The other thing is, again, make sure that when you are working or you're making the changes to production, make sure that you've tested these scripts out on lower environments first. Test them on a dev environment, test them on a QA environment, test them on more than one environment to make sure that they work the way you expect them to work. Maybe write up some testing, depending upon what language you have, to make sure that, hey, you've got the data there. Maybe write some stored procedures to do some testing for you. Sometimes even having stored procedures doing SQL updates for you is a better idea because you can establish rules that if failed, you can run everything as a single transaction and roll it all back. Or you can, once it's finished, you can do some checks in there. And if those checks pass, cool. If those checks fail, it could also roll back. So you can kind of build in some disaster recovery with this. But I just have to say, more times than not, you're going to be in a hurry. And all I have to say is before you do delete, update, you make a change, make sure you know what system you're on because you can make a mistake and be hurting tomorrow. Other thing is back up even if you don't have a system backup, back up the table that you're working on. So hopefully you at least have a snapshot and you can fix the data quickly. Be warned, triggers and things of that nature will make that harder. It's better to do a full database backup before you make changes.
A couple of things I want to throw on that is that yes, it's you definitely want to do it in a we'll call it lower level database as opposed to production. One of the things I was taught years ago as a DBA is that whatever you're going to do, if you're going to do an update, a delete, or anything like that, that's going to change stuff, even inserts. Depending on how you're doing the insert, is do it as a select first. I know this is a little geeky database stuff, but like if you're going to do delete blank from blank, do the select first and take a look at that and make sure that your row count looks like it should. If you are typing stuff, even though like always turn your auto commit off, that is a very important thing. Make sure if you're writing something that the first thing you do is your where clause. I have found too many times that I've tried to do something, I've been doing something, and then you accidentally like flub a key, and then you have to, hopefully you just have to roll it back. Definitely use color coding wherever possible. Even if I'm using command line shells, I will use stuff that I have. Granted, I'm a Mac person, but I know you can do this with other systems as well. you can change the background of the command line environment that you're in. So if you telnet into something, you can actually change that to make sure that you're in the proper shell. And as Michael said, typically, green is, development, yellow for test, and red for production. And please don't, mess with that kind of stuff. Also, I will just say, do not use root anywhere ever if you can possibly avoid it. I know there's some places you can't. In those cases, don't be afraid to use things like Docker and other, and things like that, and ways to, and even AI to generate essentially your own development environment, even when you're dealing with production environments that are just too deal with. Find a way to mimic that. I had a customer for years that was there was no way I was going to pull all of their data down. Besides the fact that it was like private, and I didn't want to deal with security. It was also just too much stinking data. So I did pull down the entire structure, and then used a couple of tools to generate mock data. That kind of stuff will help you immensely, and you can always pull down some specific examples as well to just test your stuff beforehand. Moving on, because this is actually, I'm going to fly through this one because this is actually some stuff that we really just touched on. Sort of like AI was, Michael's not looking, but it was like, thinking the same thing. So, what should happen? Developer disaster recovery 101. Break it down like a postmortem, for focusing on how to build better recovery habits. Prevention, back, feature flags, early access and prod, detection, monitoring and alerting. For example, Sentry, Datadog, Prometheus, blah, blah. There's so many tools out there, depending on where you're at, what your environment is. There are monitoring and logging tools that can help you out. There's even some things that will give you like warnings of, hey, you are doing something that is going to affect more than 5 rows. Are you really, really sure you want to do that? Monitoring and alerting is great. Rollbacks, we've talked about canary deployments, hotfix versus proper patching. This is again is the kinds of things is where you're going to go test it out before you actually do it. Communication, have an on-call policy, transparent incident updates. This is important. I think even if you're in a small team, you should be regularly letting people know when you screwed up. Because I have a team that has got some people that are newer developers. A lot of times we're new into an environment, things like that. It is very helpful to have in our stand-ups mentions of, by the way, I did this and it turned out into something that I did not expect, because that helps other people know that what the relationships are in your data, what some of the potholes are and things like that. Run books, documentation, run books, disaster recovery plans, and retrospectives. I highly recommend anywhere that you can use automation of any sort, including run books, including even the things we've talked about before, like Ant, shell scripts, if you're depending on what your environment is, things like Maven, even like continuous, CI/CD tools like your Jenkins and things like that, pipelines, all those, even a platform as code, those kinds of things. The more you can automate it, the better. That is one of the reasons I've become more and more a fan of using things like Docker Desktop for current environments, because then you can just like code the whole thing out. And then if you need to replicate an environment, bam, just run it and you're off and going. And you've got a lot of other containers like that. Now dive into the next section, which is Act 3, tools and techniques for DR readiness. This is where I think we're going to have some good conversation here. Share tools and frameworks, infrastructure, Terraform, Ansible, Kubernetes, Helm charts, CI/CD, GitHub Actions, GitLab, Jenkins, backups, automate snapshots, DR regions, testing, chaos engineering, like Gremlin, Netflix's Chaos Monkey, load testing, K6 and Locust. There are a lot of tools that we just mentioned, I just mentioned in that little list, that I don't think we use enough unless we'll use them at work. We'll use them if we're working for a company or an employer. And they're the kinds of things, because sometimes they require some time and some money and things like that to set up, and we don't necessarily have it. But I think if you can make that part of your technical roadmap as you grow out your side hustle, these things that you definitely need. Obviously, I would say obviously, but I'm going to start backups, like automating snapshots and making sure this is, if you're using cloud, I beg you to make sure that once you put that server, even if it's, Bob's pet store street, once you set up that server for him, take a snapshot and then just hold on to that. because what you can do is from that snapshot, you can generate another instance almost instantaneously. I would actually say take that and share it out to another zone. So if, for example, if they're on an East Coast zone and it goes down, have it out there in the West Coast zone so you can spin something up very quickly. This is called disaster recovery. It's at a very low, and you don't have to spend much time or money to do so. Once you do it, I think you'll realize how simple and addictive it is. That's where I'm going to stop because I know Michael has dealt with some of these things as well. And I'm curious where you want to go on this long list I just provided.
So I'm actually going to just kind of keep it simple. So from a developer's perspective, if you're new to, if a lot of these terms are new to you and, or you've touched on one thing or another, but not all of it, start playing with containers. If you are not using containers today, start now. I I'm basically beating the horse dead with the kitchen sink idea, but you can build a kitchen sink application or model using containers and these frameworks like load balancers, uh, like disaster recovery, spinning up production environments. Essentially, anything that you do, throw it in a container, replicate it, make sure it can be replicated. You can share those containers between developers. You can then take that container, stick it, literally take that image, push it up to another environment and see if it scales. If it doesn't, well, make it beefier. See if you can play with it. Containers let you do so much so quickly, and they're really very quick to build and easy to throw away. So if you mess it up, nope, drop it, rebuild it, start again. These are also very good ways to kind of centralize your development environments. So you can create one development environment, get all your tools in there for your developers for what they need, share it out to everyone. They can use that. They break it, drop it, rebuild it. All your code should be in a code repository, so you should be able to pull it up and down. Backups are easy. You just take a snapshot, done. Literally within the world of testing, this is what should be happening. And a lot of your big corporate companies are using things like, Sonar Bear, TestNG, Cucumber. They use these things, but they also use cloud-based grid kind of ideas to differentiate and test multiple systems at once, to test multiple, you can run multi-threaded tests against your current systems. Start playing around with that if you're not doing that now. These are things that you should and really need to learn and know to be able to succeed in enterprise. And also you want to make sure that your products that you build for your customers can scale. And this is the best way to do it.
And it really is. It's one of those that I don't know how often things have gotten lost in configuration. As a developer, I've spent over the I've lost a year entire time doing configuration issues and fixing those kinds of things. I know my team has regularly had, like every project, there's been at least at some point where each developer probably loses a day or two on configuration issues and things like that. Containers can really help you move that kind of stuff forward and homogenize the environment so you don't have to worry about, Bob's got this set up and Al's got this other one and Sam's got a third setup, and then none of it's, and then once they commit stuff that doesn't always work. Those kinds of things can get actually repaired very quickly. And then especially when you get into complicated things where you have to configure an environment, one person can do it and then they share it out and you don't have to worry about everybody else having to go through that process. And dive into the last section because we're at time and just sort of cover this in a high level. Culture calm. Promote the human side of handling disasters. Blameless postmortems. Stay calm under pressure. Nobody codes well in panic. It's not if, it's when and how you respond. Now, I just want to say stuff happens. There is going to be things where there's going to be bad queries. There's going to be something that happens and a server goes down. There's going to be things that a drive will fail. If you go back to our season, we talked about lessons learned from mistakes. I think there were 3 or 4 episodes at least that were mistakes where the disaster recovery plan was not in place beforehand. Test them. And really, this stuff can be so simple at times. I know, especially from, so if you're sitting there and you're building Apache web application and you're just throwing in this one folder, how hard is it to back up that folder and put it somewhere else and just put it on another machine? You can like if somebody's paying you to develop, you should be able to afford having your own local development environment that is different from production, that is close enough that you can make it work or something along those lines. Especially if you're using containers, you should be able to replicate that stuff good enough to be able to do some testing and do even DR testing beforehand. More importantly, shoot us an email at info@developador.com because we would love to hear about what is it that you're going through. What are some of your DR disasters? What are some situations where something happened and you guys I'd also like, what are some of the things that helped you where, like, hey, we did this thing that is not the norm, but it helped us through a disaster. And then some of the tools that you use, because there are a lot of them out there. And again, a lot of them are environment, we'll say, dependent. However, there's a lot out there, and it's always good to hear about new ones. We'd love to throw that out to the group and just say, hey, by the way, here's something else you guys can check out. That being said, we're going to wrap this one up. As always, you can leave us, obviously, the email, but shoot us something at developador.com. We've got anywhere you want to, we've got articles and all kinds of stuff there. Leave us a comment. Leave us just any kind of review there. Anywhere that you're listening to podcasts. If you're finding a place for podcasts and we're not there, we'll get there. YouTube at Developador out at that channel, at Developador on X. Facebook, we apparently have a page out there, and lots of other places like that. So let us know anywhere you want to find us. If you don't, we will find a way to get there sooner or later. It may take us a couple of minutes. That being said, go out there and have yourself a great day, a great week, and we will talk to you next time. Now, bonus material, it actually gives us this time bonus segments, and it's disaster snackables, a 60-second real fail from listeners, which we're not going to reach out to you guys, so you can, just chill out. Coffee cup advice, one actionable DR tip for your next sprint. And so I'm going to put you on the hot seat, and for the next sprint, regardless of where somebody's at, what would be a good DR tip that they can verify they do or add to their application next time around?
Well, we kind of touched on it in this one. The one I would say is make sure that your databases are being backed up. If you have a database, make sure that you are using your tools correctly for the different environments. One thing that we didn't really touch on through this particular episode, because in most modern day applications, we're dealing with cloud-based or software as a service applications. So stuff is in the cloud. However, you will still run into situations where you have customers with machines in the office running their software and services. First and foremost, make sure you have a power backup. I will throw that one out there because that one runs in more often than not. And two, make sure your power cables are nowhere near where your janitor might unplug something to plug in a vacuum cleaner.
Not bad. I have seen power issues. I had a customer a year ago that was regularly the thing. The problem was, I guess, part of the issue was that we were dealing with was actually literally in a closet, not a data closet, but just like a broom closet, and it regularly got turned off. And I'd be like, and I would have to remote in. So I think from the database, I want to jump to the database one because we really didn't talk about this. Not only do you need to back up your database, but restore it, do an actual test of it, restore it, and make sure you can connect to your database. There are a lot of times, I actually recently had an issue where I had lost a bunch of databases because I got a corrupted database server, a lot of them. And when I brought them back, one of the things that I'd forgotten was I had a lot of users that I had to create in order to actually deal with those applications, so the applications could deal with the data in the database. And there's also particularly you're going to run into things if you're in. I know SQL Server does this a lot. I don't think Oracle does, but pick on SQL Server where their IDs are GUIDs, and so you need to make sure when you bring stuff in that it's not regenerating UI like keys for records, because if your primary keys get broken and you've got related foreign keys, guess what? Those are going to be broken too. So test your disaster recovery. The simplest thing I would say. for your next sprint, if you are not backing up your source code and your database separately and putting them somewhere that's on a different machine, do that. It's a very easy script to write. You could have an AI engine can write one for you, whether you want to do it and pick the language you want it written in. It will do it and it'll get you something close enough, take you probably 15, 30 minutes tops to have a nice little backup script for your stuff. We have not backed this up, so we're going to go do this right away because we never know what happens to our episodes. I jest a little bit because I don't think I've ever actually lost an episode. I've always hit record in time, and so knocking on some not actual wood but fake wood. Hopefully that does not happen this time. We will be back. We're going to continue this. We've got plenty of episodes left. We're like, I don't know, only halfway through the season or something like that. So we've got a lot more artificial intelligence ahead and all of the shenanigans that it causes. So go out there and have yourself a good one. Thanks for watching. We will talk to you next time.